know you're worried about me. Let's just drop it for now, okay? I'm really sleepy." He nodded in understanding and kissed my nose and forehead again. That was all it took for me to close my eyes and drift into a deep sleep. My eyes fluttered open, and all I could see was the light streaming from the slit of the curtains. To tell you the truth, I'd thought I'd see Harrison since he was sleeping in front of me when I drifted to sleep last night. However, he wasn't in sight, but the sound of his snoring and the heat that was being blown onto my neck confirmed that he was now behind me. I felt his arm around my waist, and I would have felt comfortable in this position. But, of course, I didn't. I felt his, pressing against my back, and my face flushed at how huge it felt. His leg that was between mine crept higher and higher, and the hand that belonged to the arm slung across my waist was rubbing my stomach all too passionately. His hand then moved from my stomach, down my legs, and it rubbed against my inner thigh, moving dangerously close to my private area. I squeaked, but he didn't hear me. As he was moving back up, I heard him mutter something, but I couldn't place a finger on what he said. His hand moved dangerously up my arm, leaving a trail of goosebumps there. I felt his warm hand go back down to my belly before going back up and cupping one of my breasts, ignoring what he was muttering. Even if it felt really good, I squeaked in embarrassment, my face going a deep shade of red. This caused Harrison to shoot his eyes open and look at me in alert, eyeing the room for any danger. He noticed my red face before he followed his hand down to where he was currently groping. This caused him to jolt back enough for him to fall off the bed and landing on the floor with a loud thump. I laughed at him, even if the situation was kind of awkward, and looked at his figure on the floor, his hand rubbing the back of his head. "I'm so sorry, Els. I really didn't know what I was doing," Harrison said, smiling apologetically. "Oh, shut up, big boy. You apologize too much for accidents," I said irritably before pouting. "Don't I get a good morning kiss?" "And finally, the moment you have all been waiting for," Father Gregory has said, smiling widely at the two couples looking eagerly at him. What was I supposed to say again?" he asked, scratching his balding head, white patches of hair peeping through. The corner of his eyes crinkled in amusement as he smiled wickedly at the couple, who was practically jumping up and down with impatience. The crowd laughed at Father Gregory's sense of humor and Andrew and Amanda's impatience. I mean, it was a huge crowd, the church filled with all of our small-town citizens, ranging from a newborn to the elderly who were able to make some history in our town. Even Amanda's immediate family was there, but boy was it huge. She had about 17 brothers and sisters and 13 nephews and nieces. Some of her cousins and close friends showed up as well. My face was screwed up into the utmost happiness for my brother. My light pink-tinted lips stretched into a big smile that made the corners of my eyes wrinkle. I was glad that our beauty artist had put on waterproof mascara and eyeliner, because crying and tearing up was all I was able to do this whole procession. I watched as my brother, who was in a black tux and his hair slicked up messily, encircled his arm around Amanda's petite waist. He looked charming as ever, with his brown eyes twinkling and his face in utter happiness. Amanda wiped away a stray tear, her dark red, long-lasting lipstick a huge contrast to her pale and pretty face. Her dress was pretty, with jewels, studs, and crystals that shined across the ivory silk material of the corset top. The dress ended in a big poof that reached the floor, but when she picked it up so she could walk, we saw white pumps with intricate details. Finally, her trail that seemed like a waterfall as it cascaded behind her. Her blonde hair swept into an updo, her bangs curled to frame her face. I had to say the couple looked stunning. Perfect. My mom, who sat beside me on the pew, sobbed silently. She looked at me, before she smiled and clutched my hand in her own. I squeezed her hand gently as she whispered, "I can't believe he's getting married already. My baby boy, all grown up." I patted her hand and almost laughed, but we were in a church for crying out loud. And I was one of Amanda's bridesmaids. If I laughed now, everyone would give me the stink eye. "Okay, fine, Andrew," Father Gregory sighed, slugging his shoulders playfully. "The moment you have all been waiting for, or shall I say, the moment Andrew has been waiting for." He smiled, adding a dramatic affect before raising his hand slightly and saying, "You may now kiss the bride. Congratulations to Mr. and Mrs. Andrew Turner." Everyone whooped and clapped as Andrew swept Amanda so close to him. They looked into each other's eyes first, before their lips met halfway. I smiled as their eyes closed, and their arms went around each other. I clapped, loudly, even cheering loudly with everyone else. They pulled away, everyone clapping again. Afterwards, we took pictures, the flash blinding my eyes. The pictures ranged from family members to close friends, siblings, in-laws, entourage, etc. When we were done, my vision was completely obscured with black dots. Everyone exited the church and waited in the parking lot that was overflowing with cars, the cars even parking near the road. I had to say this was the biggest wedding I've ever seen in our small town. "Okay, everyone," Andrew yelled, his arms still encircled around Amanda. He raised his other arm in the air, his fist clear to the swarm of people. "Let's party." I laughed at his bluntness at wanting to celebrate. Well, I didn't blame him. He just got married to someone who loves him equally, maybe even more. All I knew was that they loved each other, and that was all that mattered. "Oh, gosh, Jessie," Mom sobbed, wiping her tears lightly with a tissue. Her cheeks and nose were red. She fixed her light pink dress lightly before clutching me in a hug. "I can't believe my kids are growing up so fast." "Mom," I laughed, but a deep voice that sent me shivers interrupted me. "Wow," Harrison said from behind me. I turned around to find him with his head held high and his mouth set into a tiny smile. His blue eyes twinkled as he saw smile at him appreciatively. I ran up to him, flinging my arms around his neck in a tight embrace while his arms went around my waist. I shuddered lightly when I heard him sharply inhale my scent, and instantly, I felt his body calm down under my touch. I closed my eyes and relished the warmth of him near me. Then he pushed me away slightly, taking my hand and twirling me around. "Don't you look beautiful?" he said proudly, eyeing my attire. My dark hair was swept to one side in a fancy ponytail, soft curls falling through it. I wore makeup today, something I haven't done in a long time, making my green eyes pop out from my dark and long eyelashes that were coated with mascara. Even my lips popped out with the light pink lipstick I have on. My pink dress was made of silk, one shoulder sleeved covered in flowers and the length being promising, the dress hugging my curves right below my knees. Even in these black heels, I was still a head shorter than Harrison. "Dot, you don't look too bad yourself," I said, winking at him and eyeing him up and down. He was in a white button-down shirt that rolled up to his sleeves, and dark-washed jeans finished up with Nike shoes. His jet-black hair was styled messily like always. "Yeah, I know I do," he said cockily, leaning down and kissing my cheek, still holding my hand. I kissed his cheek as well, lingering my lips on his smooth skin for longer than necessary. I knew we had to keep it innocent, especially in front of my mom and my family. "See, Angela," he said, clearing his throat and slung his arm around my shoulder. "You look beautiful," he continued, still trying to impress my mom. "Oh, shut up," my mom said sternly, ignoring the look I gave her. "You don't have to kiss up to me. You do enough for me, letting my daughter stay with you until her room is done being fixed." She gave him a warm smile that she hardly gave people, unless she really trusted and knew them. I felt Harrison shift his weight. As I looked up at him, he looked down at me with a 100-watt smile. It was as if he won the lottery 2 times in a row. "It's really no problem, Angela. I'd do anything for her," he said sincerely. Even if it was what most guys said, I knew he truly meant it as I saw his pupils dilate a little bit, sending my heart in overdrive. "Call me Mom," she said, adding a wink. "You better be careful," I said to Harrison, chuckling silently. "Aunt Heather is checking you out." We looked towards the table where my 60-year-old aunt sat. She pushed her round-framed glasses up, squinting at Harrison even if she wore glasses. When she realized we were looking at her, she fluffed her auburn-colored wig and smiled, showing her pearly white dentures. Oh gosh, this was like family reunion. Everyone asked how I was, if I work, whether my grades were bad or not, what I was up to now, a days, etc. However, all I knew is that they were asking just to find something to gossip about. Some of the older ones were warm and honest, and I loved that. When I mean that everyone was at the wedding, I meant everyone I knew as well. The Stone and Avalon pack were here, and let me tell you, they were all dressed so stunningly that everyone else looked plain and dull. All my classmates were here, friends, and acquaintances that I had said hi to as well. Even some of the girls who gave me glares as Harrison and I made contact were there. Many of them are the sluts he played with before, and my cousins, that the majority of them were only probably 13 or 14. "Hey, let's go dance," Harrison whispered in my ear, sending shivers down my spine. I cocked an eyebrow and looked straight into his eyes. "You dance?" Oh, yeah, He dances," Betty said, flipping her slick straight hair behind her shoulder, her hair looking like a waterfall against that lilac dress. "Ask the guys." "He has some moves," Perry said, nudging Nell, who was too busy staring at Jennifer. Scott just nodded his head, digging it in his food. Clark and Sam snickered at their motion. Jennifer blushed, but James clutched her close to him as if to tell Nell to back off. If you asked where Brian was, he was on the dance floor already. Apparently, the music was the bomb, as Brian had said. I laughed once again as I met Harrison's impatient eyes again. "I would love to, I smiled. We got up from the round table we were all sitting on, leaving them to eat while Nell and Perry played with the pink and red floral centerpiece. I walked towards the dance floor that had drapes coming out from the romantic faux rooftop with Harrison close behind. Right when we got there, the music changed into a slow one. Harrison pulled me close to him, his hands around my waist and his chin resting on my head. I sighed, leaning into him, my head against his chest. I welcomed his warmth, smell, and his erratic heartbeat. To tell you the truth, I totally forgot that there were people there, that the newlyweds were dancing as well, and the other couples came up on stage. All I felt was me and him, living the moment like it was our last. "You're not too bad," I joked as Harrison twirled me around. "Not too bad?" "Now that hurts." He feigned hurt, his lips pouting playfully. I squeaked as he skillfully dipped me, him smiling widely at me as he hovered over me. He pulled us back, touching his forehead to mine. I stared at his blue eyes, amazed at the depth and feelings that swam around it. We heard someone clear their throats. Turning our heads reluctantly, we saw Brian standing awkwardly. I smiled at him as he said, "Hey man, do you mind if I dance with Jessie?" "No," I answered as Harrison sighed and let go of me unwillingly. I laughed at his bluntness. "Come on, big boy, just one song. Besides, I miss Brian." I watched as Harrison flicked my nose, and before I could protest, he ran away and asked my mom politely if she wanted to dance. Putting my hand in Brian's own, he pulled me close to him in a friendly way, and I sighed, realizing how much I actually missed him. "I didn't know you had an older brother." "Let alone him being my brother's best man," I said, nodding to an older-looking Brian. He wore a red button-down and slacks, his hair blonde and messy. He had a little scruff and charming hazel eyes. Brian shrugged and said, "That's how I knew your brother. He and Jamie, my brother, are best friends." I feel smart. "I learned something," I said while he chuckled. "You look beautiful tonight, by the way," Brian said as we swayed to the music. "What? No cheesy pickup line?" I gasped, secretly smiling in the inside. "Better be careful, Brian. Your reputation status is going low." "Oh, shush that tiny pie hole. I'm at a wedding. I feel particularly romantic," he scoffed. "So why don't you ask Betty to dance?" I said, motioning my eyes in her direction where she smiled at Nell and Perry as they told her a story. He looked at her for a while before a blush crept its way onto his neck and face. Even his ears were pink. I cocked my eyebrow at him, waiting for his reply. "Because, well, hello? She's Betty," he sighed. "I can never meet her expectations." I pinched his cheeks while he scowled at me. "Oh, is the little blushing player finally shy? Has he finally found the one special crush?" I cooed. He swatted my hand away and his cheeks reddened. "Be quiet, Jessie. You're so loud. She is the one. I just was too in denial to realize it sooner," he blurted out. Once my eyes widened and his mouth clamped shut when he realized what he just said, I pinched his arm. "Ow," he yelled, earning some glares from people. "Ask her to dance, you idiot," I demanded, clenching my teeth and putting my hands on my hips. He looked at me in horror as I slapped his shoulder again. "Go." "Fine, ow, I said I would," Brian exclaimed, running towards Betty, who watched him with big eyes. I smiled cheekily as Harrison came back and wrapped his arms around me again. "Oh, Jessie, what have you done this time?" he teased, kissing my forehead. They'll be thanking me later. Yeah, right after they… Well, isn't it my big girl so grown up already? Never thought I'd see the day where she's clinging to a boy, a familiar voice said with smugness. I turned around to see the person I tried so hard to avoid this whole night. He held a wine glass with the red wine staining its clear surface, while his other hand held the itsy-bitty waist of the blonde woman who was half his age. Tell me, do I have to beat you up, Sonny, just to let you know not to hurt my daughter? Dad, I said, scowling at his little remark. I felt Harrison straighten up behind me, his chest against my back and his hands rubbing smoothing circles on my waist. My father's narrowed eyes flew to his hands and back to my face again. I turned my head to look at Sandra, who was busy trying to throw a flirtatious smile to Harrison, who was completely ignoring her. She had on all the diamonds where it was possible to be at. Diamond necklace, rings, bracelet, anklets, or whatever you name. Hell, even the one strap on her inappropriate dress, which was clung to her body, hugging her balloon, plastic boobs and short enough to see her butt cheek popping out, was encrusted with diamonds. Sandra, I sneered as she gagged at me. Tell me, honey, is that young boy forcing you into all of this? My father said, eyeing Harrison. No, I scoffed, patting Harrison's hand that went stiff. Don't lie to me, my father said while I rolled my eyes. I tried to keep my calm, feeling Harrison behind me, his breath tickling the hair on top of my head. Oh, come on, Hughes, Sandra said in her nasally voice. Why would he go for… her? I was about to pounce on her, but I wanted to hear my father's reply. He looked at us while I felt Harrison's hand start to shake at my hips. I held it in both my hands, trying to calm him down. The corner of my father's lip went up as he said, "That's exactly what I was thinking." She looks like a slut now, Georgie, Sandra said, flipping her hair. Oh, it was on. I let go of Harrison, already trying to pounce on the blonde bimbo in front of me while the tears spilled out of my eyes. Even my dad deserved a smack in the face. Right when my nails were about to reach her face and her high-pitched scream sounded in the air, Harrison wrapped his arms around my waist and pushed me behind him. Brian helped hold me back while I was struggling so hard in his arms. Mr. Turner, I heard the bitterness in Harrison's tone. I think the only person here trying to hurt her is you and… He turned his head a little, and I'm guessing it was at Sandra before continuing. Ms. Blondie over here. And if you were really wondering why I'm going for your daughter, it's because she's beautiful in every single way possible. Look, son, I don't think you know who you're talking to. My father's voice rang out in the silence. From where I could see, my dad had stepped up, his nose now touching Harrison's own, even if Harrison was a few inches taller than him. No disrespect, Mr. Turner, but I think I do, Harrison challenged. Right before my dad could throw a punch, Andrew caught his fist and put it down. He put his body in between the two, putting a few distance between them. What the hell is going on? Dad, this is my wedding for Christ's sake, Andrew cried, anger clear on his face. I watched as my dad went to stand next to Sandra again, her pathetic cries coming from her ugly mouth. My mom had her hands on her hips, shaking her head, her lips a thin line. The Stone and Avalon pack already standing up in their seats and looked as if they were about to pounce on anyone who made a sudden move. My family members and everyone else just watched with eyebrows raised, their mouths agape. Then, all I heard was a low growl that caused me to turn my head everywhere, looking for the unique sound. It was so eerie and caused goosebumps to rise on my forearms. Everyone turned to look at me and, to my surprise, I found that the strange noise erupted from deep below my belly to the back of my throat. It was only now that I realized lips were pulled back, showing off my clenched teeth. Holy crap! Her eyes, Andrew mumbled as I saw the world changing to strange colors before my eyes. What the hell is happening to me? Harrison, get her out of here and calm her down. Now, my brother demanded. Harrison grabbed my hand, pulling me out of the murmuring and whispering crowd and out to the grassy plains of my backyard, where the wedding wasn't being held at. He quickly sat me down on the tree log. Not caring if my dress got dirty, I slumped down onto it, trying to calm my heart rate, but it just wouldn't go down. Harrison grabbed my face, forcing me to look at his clear blue eyes that shone in the moonlight. Jesse, listen to me. Just forget it happened. Calm down. You have to calm down, he murmured, rubbing his calloused thumb against my cheek. As I felt my heartbeat go down, my eyes began to see normally again. I smiled at Harrison as he blew out a sigh, wiping the sweat on his forehead. Gosh, I felt so horror, I began, but then I felt a searing pain in the gut of my stomach. It caused me to fall to the ground on my back, and I began to convulse as I screamed. I shut my eyes, trying to get rid of the pain, only feeling the tears spill out of my eyes. To make matters worse, I heard the crackling of bones and the pain of my arm going in a painful angle. Gethy? Harrison yelled frantically, and I was surprised to hear his voice throughout my screams and the crackling of my bones. The darkness, Angel's POV. Oh, what a stupid little girl. I know her secret, and so does everyone else in her families and her so-called group of friends. But she doesn't. They think that, I don't know, but they are wrong. I learned so much of this. I grew up with it. I grew up to hate werewolves. They didn't even know I was at the wedding. They didn't know I was so close to them, mere feet away from that naive girl and her stupid boyfriend. Or should I say, mate. In fact, I played a big role in the wedding, and still, they didn't suspect me because I played innocent and clueless to all of this. I smiled wickedly in my dimly lit office, still in the fancy attire I wore at the special event. She got angry, and I wanted to see that the whole time I was here. The events of her growling and her eyes glowing and dilating replayed in my mind over and over again. That was all it took to confirm my thoughts about her. She was the one we had to kill, but let's tease her and warn her first. She acts like she isn't scared, but I know her well enough to know it's a lie. She's pathetic, and unbalanced to the world's nature. And I will stop at nothing to make sure she was gone. I threw the cup on my desk across my room, and it crashed, the shards falling to the ground. I pushed my already messy hair so it was out of my face. I couldn't believe she was the one, no. Nobody will be happy with me once I kill her. Nobody. But did I care? I heard a familiar tap knock on my office door, and I smiled wickedly again. Come in, I yelled. The door creaked as the young man came in. Someone who I trusted for a long time now, and someone who I could definitely count on for the rest of my life. His brown eyes twinkled with an evil glint, and his sinister smirk was obvious. Even this guy was someone Jesse would never expect. He sat down in the seat across from me, crossing his arms above his chest. You looked good tonight, he said. Perfect timing, eh? Thank you, partner, I replied. Did you do the job? He nodded cockily, holding up the bottle of toxin I gave him earlier and slamming it on my desk. I have to admit, he sighed. You are good, and so are you. Now I got another job for you, I said, picking in my drawer and throwing my prized possession on the white wooden desk. I smiled as I saw all the pictures of pretty little Jessie rummaging around in my drawer. My partner eyed it with awe as he slightly fingered it. He slowly sat back in his chair, his eyes twinkling as he kept his stare on the object that glinted under the dim light. His smirk returned as he met my eyes and asked, Now, what do you want me to do with a gun? I felt my bones breaking, the crackling sound of it roaring in my ears. My screaming and sobbing rang through the night air. I couldn't think of anything as I felt my sweat slick off my body and the tears rolling down from my eyes that were shut tight. I screamed again and buckled up as I felt my leg twist in a painful way. It felt like my muscles were being punched at, my bones being chopped up, and my head was going to explode soon. The pain was unbearable, and all I wanted was for it to stop. I felt myself being lifted up, and I tried hard not to hit the person, but that ended when I felt my gut being squeezed and my shoulder bone being dislocated. I kept my eyes shut as the person put me down slowly, and the dead leaves on the ground poking my back and arms. It would have felt painful, but not compared to the pain I was feeling. I cried again, and rolled when I felt my ribs being messed with. I opened my eyes for a fraction of a second, and I could see the world glowing around me. I could even see the spider up, on the highest branch of the tree. Soon, I could tell I was in the forest at the back of my house. I noticed that my dress was tearing, the silk spreading apart as my body seemed to get bigger by the second. I closed my eyes again when I felt the pain in my mouth. It was itchy, and I wailed in pain as I felt my jaw being pushed out and stretched. My teeth even felt like someone was trying to pull it out with pliers. 5 minutes later, I felt my body begin to calm down. In fact, I felt great. I felt better than I ever felt. I sighed, but it sounded different to my ears. It sounded more like a huff. My ears perked up and I thought that was strange. However, everything about this night seemed strange, so I quickly dismissed it and picked up my hand to wipe any sweat on my forehead. I stopped my hand in place to steady it. Or might I say paw? I was confused beyond anything anyone could explain. Looking everywhere, my eyes landed on the pink material on the ground. I could even see the dust on it, and tiny grains of dirt on my discarded, shredded dress. Even my shoes were shredded into pieces. Wait, I was in the forest at night. How could I see so clearly? Then, my eyes landed on a handsome boy with clear blue eyes who was coming towards me with caution. His blue eyes were in shock, and something else was written on his face. It was indecisive. It was in between understanding, and was that disgust? I heard my whines coming from my mouth, like a dog whines. Then I looked at the boy once again, and inside my head, all I heard was one word: mate. Harrison's POV. I watched painfully as Jessie began her change, her bones twisting in unimaginable and painful angles. I wished I could go up to her and hug her, but I had to let her do this on her own, like I had done. Trust me, every time I heard her whimper or cry, I flinched in my seat to get up, but forced myself to sit down. My eyes were tired and my hair was messy from my constant hand that was running through it. Every wolf had to do their first change on their own. It was the only way they could carry themselves for the rest of their lives. I wished that Angela had told her that this would be happening soon, that she would be turning into a werewolf just like us. I knew ever since that night her bedroom window got vandalized. Angela had promised me not to tell anyone about it. She explained that her family was a family of late bloomers. Even Andrew was a werewolf, but Angela had told me that he hated it. He hated that he had to feel pain every time. She told me he had a hard time and still has with this whole werewolf process. But what I didn't get was why Angela wasn't one. I tried to work the puzzle pieces, but I'm missing a whole bunch of pieces. My thoughts were snapped out of me as I heard one more guttural cry before it became silent. Then I knew one thing. She finally made it. Her body convulsed one more time before her fur came out and her bones changed into a werewolf form in a second flat. And there she stood, so heart-achingly beautiful that I cried. I cried because my mate had finally found herself. When I stood, I froze mid-stride towards her as I saw the confused look in her green eyes that shone when she saw her paw. But that's not what got me. Not only was she confused, but I was as well. No werewolf had white fur, nor did they have a perfect heart black-shaped marks on their forehead. They also didn't have teeth bigger than those on Jessie, and they certainly didn't have the same glow the moon emitted coming out from their fur. Then all my explanations of all my questions came hauntingly in my face. Jessie was a healer. I watched horrified as I took a couple of small steps towards Jessie, gulping in as I did so. I was so disgusted, trust me. I didn't believe the legends of one healer being left alive. No one did. They were the reasons why wolves were made, sacrificing their bodies to the full moon, and why my ancestor had lost his son. I was disgusted beyond belief. Scowling at Jessie felt wrong and right at the same time. Should I hate her for being what she is that she didn't even choose to be? Or love her always and not care what form she was in? Should I use my werewolf instincts to hate on healers? Or use my heart and learn? It wasn't her fault. I was so clueless. That was until she looked at me in the eyes and I saw her wolf-like grin. And then I made up my mind. I had to protect her and love her no matter what. It wasn't her fault after all. I, like everyone else, should learn to let go of the past and move on. Healers may be good to those werewolves around the world today. I smiled back at Jessie and took 3 big strides towards her. Lifting my hand, I pushed it into her plush and soft fur, relishing in how good it felt. I looked into those green eyes and said, "Hey, Els, you're beautiful, babe." Because it was true. She was beautiful. A beautiful disaster like the rest of us. I sat beside her and leaned my head against her tired body. Listening to her deep breathing, I knew she fell asleep from being so exhausted from the first couple of changes. Then I, too, was dragged into the darkness and pulled into a deep sleep. I felt my head hit the ground hard as my pillow ran away, squealing. I opened my eyes quickly, rubbing the back of my head and groaning. Noticing I was still in the forest, the sun shining through the leaves of the trees, I looked around for Jessie. She should be in human form already. I got up, dusting the dirt from my messily tucked white polo. "Els," I yelled, looking around everywhere, landing on particularly nothing. "Over here," she shouted back, her hand waving behind a tree and her head sticking through. I smiled as I saw her sexy bedhead, even if it were covered in leaves. Her cheeks were flushed and her head had a smudge of dirt on it. I laughed at her cute appearance, but hey, I had to admit, she looked sexy. I began to walk over to her, but she picked up her hand and yelled, "Nuh-uh. Stay where you are." "What? Why?" I asked, my voice showing hurt at her distance. I scrunched up my eyebrows and stuck my hands into my pockets. She stuck her head out again, her cheeks now flaming, before giving me a pointed look. "You know why," she said, pouting. "No, I don't," I said, confused, shaking my head and looking down. Was she scared that I might hate her for what she was? I didn't want her to think that. I opened my mouth to say something, but she interrupted. "Come out from behind the tree so we could talk." "You don't?" she asked while her eyebrow rose. She studied my expression as I nodded at her, taking one small step towards her. She hid behind the tree again before yelling, "Do not come closer." "I swear, Harrison Zachary White." "Why not?" I asked, waving off that she used my full name. "Because I'm naked, that's why," she blurted. I froze as I was about to take another step, and blushed as all the dirty thoughts came into my head. Holy crap, my head was on her soft skin the whole night, and I didn't know about it? Call me perv, but come on, if you were a guy, you'd understand. She poked her head out again and looked down at the bulge that came back right when it went away just a minute ago. Trust me, waking up is the second hardest thing in the morning, if you know what I mean. You pervert, she said, blushing a deeper red. I just chuckled and let the awkward silence fill in. Aren't you going to give me my dress? Nope, I said. It tore when you, changed last night. Ugh, she groaned, and I couldn't help another dirty thought as she grunted that word. Here, use my shirt, I said, taking off my shirt and feeling eyes on my chest. I shivered at her gaze, even if this was probably like the 1,000th time she looked at my chest. It never got old for her, and her reaction never got old for me. I threw the shirt at her outstretched hand, and she caught it perfectly. She stuck her hand back behind the tree, and I heard her sigh as she put it on. I laughed when I heard her intake of my scent. She came back out shyly, and I couldn't help but look down at her long legs and curves that were seen in my baggy shirt. I was lucky that the white polo was a thick material, because if it was sheer, and I saw every inch of her, I don't know what I would do. She stopped a few inches away from the tree before shifting her foot, as if she was self-conscious of her body. I couldn't help but lick my lips at her body. It didn't help with her bedhead hair. I groaned and said, "Why do you have to be so beautiful?" "What? No sexy? Yeah? No hot? Isn't that what guys say?" she asked while laughing shyly. What? Heck no. When a guy says a girl is hot, he's only looking at her body. When a guy says a girl is pretty, he's only looking at her face. But when a guy says a girl is beautiful, he's looking at her heart and her looks. Trust me when I say that you're beautiful. You're the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. And how many girls have you told that to? She asked, laughing again. About 30, but only once did I mean it, I replied, giving her a heated gaze as to tell her she was the one. I smiled softly at her and she did the same. She rolled her green eyes at me playfully before returning to comfortable silence. But, of course, I broke the silence and joked, "Come on, big girl. Don't I get a good morning kiss?" I puckered my lips in a joking manner as she laughed and made her way towards me. I felt a stronger connection towards her because she had changed last night. Relief and comfort washed over me as I took in her delicious strawberry scent and brought her close to me, wrapping my arms around her tiny waist and relishing in the heat radiating off of her. I brought my lips to hers and kissed her passionately, every kiss getting better than the last. "Hi there," I whispered, while I leaned my head against her forehead and watched as her eyes fluttered open. Jessie smiled and said, "Hey there, Dot. You're so corny. Only for you, babe, I said, kissing her nose. Oh yeah, I was definitely going to love her no matter what form she was in.